Van Halen is demanding, for some bizarre, retarded reason, for the audience to make a choice.
September 4th, 1996, Radio City Music Hall. Over 13 million people glued to their TVS watching MTV Live. Backstage, Eddie Van Halen gripped his guitar tight, thinking this reunion would finally bury the years of bad blood between him and David Lee Roth. But in just 7 minutes, Roth would drop 4 sentences that would publicly shred Eddie's pride to pieces. This moment wouldn't just end any hope of peace. It would become the most humiliating scene in rock guitar history.
Any band, we're having a career difference here. We're having a musical difference, and we're going to go our own ways.
The MTV stage was about to turn into a bloodbath, and Eddie Van Halen was walking straight into the trap. The irony was brutal. For nearly 2 decades, Eddie had changed the game, inventing sounds that nobody thought a guitar could make. His famous brown sound became legend, and his custom Frankenstrat guitar was more recognizable than most band logos. He'd ripped out Eruption in one take, tore up the Beat It solo that fused metal and pop like magic, and battled addictions that could have ended his story twice. But none of that mattered tonight. Because in that backstage hallway, under those cold, buzzing lights, Eddie was about to face the kind of betrayal that hits harder than any critic. Public humiliation dressed up as celebration. The truth was, David Lee Roth had been carrying this resentment for years, maybe not even fully realizing it. Ever since 1985, when he walked out on Van Halen convinced he was the true star, the voice, the showman, the reason the crowd screamed, that bitterness had been simmering. 11 years later, his solo career was barely breathing, while Van Halen, now with Sammy Hagar, was still packing stadiums. Roth needed a comeback, a stage, and a shot at redemption. And MTV was about to hand him the perfect setup, wrapped in a shiny reunion package.
Later, I'm reading in Rolling Stone what an asshole I am, and how poor little Eddie was forced to spend the last 12 years of his life living a lie.
What most fans never know about these televised reunions is that they're time bombs with perfect lighting. MTV knew exactly what they were doing when they reached out separately, calling Eddie and Alex Van Halen on one side and Roth on the other. They sold it as a historic moment for the MTV generation, a nostalgic blast to prove Van Halen still had the spark that lit up 1984. Eddie hesitated, and who could blame him? His history with Roth was pure chaos. Even in their glory days, their sessions were wars of ego and creative control, every studio day feeling like a standoff between 2 lions who refused to bow. But MTV turned up the charm, reminding Eddie that millions of fans had grown up on their sound, their energy. This was his chance to reclaim the story, to show the world that the original Van Halen could still bring the thunder. Maybe enough time had passed. Maybe old wounds could finally heal. So Eddie agreed, but only under one condition. This was going to be simple. No speeches, no drama, no surprises, just pure music. They'd rehearse lightly, hit the stage, play 2 of their classic tracks, and remind the world that the original Van Halen lineup still had fire in their veins. Roth's plan was crystal clear. No rehearsals, maximum chaos. This wasn't a reunion, it was revenge in disguise. He wanted drama, shock, and a live audience to witness it all. The first warning sign should have been obvious, the rehearsal that never happened. 3 days before the VMAs, Eddie and Alex showed up at a Manhattan studio right on time, ready to run through the set. They waited and waited. 40 long minutes passed. No sign of Roth. When they finally got him on the phone, he brushed it off with that classic Roth arrogance, said he had scheduling conflicts, and that rehearsing songs they'd played 1,000 times was unnecessary. He told them, "Relax, it'll all be fine on the night." But Eddie felt that familiar pit in his stomach, the same one that haunted him during their final tour in '84. Deep down, he knew something was off. That sixth sense was screaming that this wasn't just about music anymore. Something darker was brewing. Still, he forced it down. Maybe Roth was just being his unpredictable self. Maybe it really would come together when the lights hit and the crowd roared. That's what Eddie told himself. Because he had to believe that professionalism would win out over ego. September 4th finally arrived, charged with that electric tension only live TV can create. Radio City Music Hall was glowing, packed with celebrities, record execs, and die-hard fans who grew up worshiping Van Halen's videos on MTV. Eddie showed up early like always, laser-focused, no nonsense. To him, the show wasn't theater, it was sacred. He found his guitar tech, started his ritual, checking the Frankenstrat's tuning not once, not twice, but 3 times. He fine-tuned his Variac transformer to get that perfect voltage sag that gave him the legendary Brown sound. Every detail mattered because Eddie didn't do halfway. Backstage, MTV was chaos. Headsets buzzing, producers yelling, makeup artists running from room to room. It was pure madness. Somewhere in that storm, Eddie spotted Michael Anthony, the band's loyal bassist who'd flown in just for this big moment. But something was off. Mike looked anxious, and that wasn't like him at all. "You seen Dave?" he asked. Eddie shook his head. Roth was in the building, sure, but he was avoiding them completely, claiming he needed to focus, warm up his vocals, meditate, anything to dodge a face-to-face. Alex Van Halen, the brother who'd been through every war beside Eddie, wasn't buying it. He leaned over an hour before showtime and muttered, "Something's wrong. Dave's too quiet. When he's quiet, he's plotting." Eddie wanted to laugh it off, but Alex wasn't wrong. Roth's silence was never peace. It was the calm before the storm. Everyone knew that when Roth stopped performing off stage, that's when his mind was cooking up something ruthless. Then came the final half hour before they hit the stage. And according to insiders, it was painfully awkward. MTV had set up a small backstage photo op, meant to capture a feel-good image of the original Van Halen lineup together again. Cameras were ready, photographers buzzing, waiting for a picture that would scream rock history. But what they didn't know was that the tension in that room could have cut glass. No smiles, no small talk, just forced grins hiding years of bitterness and suspicion. And as the flashbulbs went off, Eddie had no idea that behind those sunglasses, David Lee Roth wasn't smiling. He was sharpening the knife. It had been over a decade since they'd all stood side by side like this, the original Van Halen lineup, frozen in one frame again. The photographer called the shots, placing David Lee Roth dead center. Of course, he demanded that spot. Eddie to his left with the legendary Frankenstrat in hand, Alex behind the drum kit MTV had rolled in for the photo, and Michael clutching his bass. The camera clicked, and not a single real smile appeared. Roth tried cracking jokes, but every punchline landed like a grenade in a church, awkward, sharp, and heavy with meanings only the band members could catch. His old times comments had a sting to them, little digs wrapped in nostalgia. Eddie stayed silent, not taking the bait. He just ran his fingers along the worn neck of his guitar, finding peace in the only thing that never lied to him, that Frankenstrat. It had been through everything, tours, fights, fame, rehab, and it never once turned on him. Then a production assistant came rushing over with last-minute details. The plan sounded simple enough. They'd play 2 songs, Ain't Talking About Love and a shortened version of Panama, straightforward, safe. But then came the twist. MTV had slipped in one minor change Eddie hadn't agreed to. David Lee Roth would have a live mic for spontaneous banter between songs. Eddie's heart dropped. Spontaneous banter and Roth were a dangerous combo. Giving him an open mic was like handing fireworks to a guy holding a lighter. Eddie tried to protest, but the assistant was already gone. The clock was ticking, the show was locked in, and once live TV starts rolling, it's unstoppable. His gut told him something bad was coming, but it was too late to stop it. 15 minutes before showtime, Roth finally appeared, in full David Lee Roth mode. He strolled in wearing an outfit so expensive it could have paid for Eddie's first car. Rhinestones, silk, and swagger. That trademark smirk was glued to his face. He didn't even look at Eddie or Alex. Instead, he started working the room like a politician at a fundraiser, shaking hands, throwing out one-liners, and reminding everyone who the real star was. David Lee Roth, baby. The voice, the face, the man who made Van Halen. He didn't say it outright, but the energy screamed it. Eddie watched from a distance, tightening his grip on his guitar. The dread was building. Roth wasn't acting like a man ready for a fun reunion. He was acting like someone about to pull off a headline stunt. The vibe was wrong. Dead wrong. Then the lights dropped. The crowd inside Radio City Music Hall erupted. Over 13 million viewers leaned closer to their TVs as the Van Halen logo flashed across the massive video screens. It was time. Eddie, Alex, and Michael stepped out to a wall of cheers, the kind of sound that could shake your bones. And for a moment, just 90 glorious seconds, everything felt right. The opening riff of Ain't Talkin' About Love sliced through the hall like lightning. Eddie's fingers moved across the Frankenstrat with that effortless magic that made him a legend. Alex was locked in, drumming with precision that could have been measured by a metronome. Michael's bass thundered underneath, grounding the chaos. Even Roth looked on fire, hitting the notes, strutting with that over-the-top charisma that made him a rock god in the 80s. But Eddie could feel it. Something underneath all that energy wasn't right. Roth kept glancing at him mid-song, not smiling, not glaring, just watching with this strange, unreadable expression. It wasn't the look of a bandmate enjoying a comeback. It was colder, sharper, almost like he was waiting for his moment to strike. The first song ended to wild applause. The crowd roared like it was 1984 all over again. This was supposed to be it, the redemption moment, the night that proved the original Van Halen magic still burned bright despite all the bad blood. It should have been perfect. And then it happened. The exact second David Lee Roth decided to pull the trigger on his master plan. The bomb he'd been quietly building for years was finally about to explode. Right there on live TV with 13 million people watching. As the crowd's cheers died down, Roth gripped the mic and stepped forward. Instead of introducing the next song or saying something respectful about the reunion, he just paused. 3 seconds, maybe 4. But in live television, that silence felt like forever. You could almost hear the tension buzzing through the room. Eddie's muscles locked tight. His gut told him this was it. Whatever Roth was about to say, it wouldn't be good. Then came that smile, the one Roth used when he thought he was being clever, the smirk that meant trouble was about to drop. "You know," he began, his voice echoing through Radio City Music Hall with that overdramatic tone he loved to use. "I forgot the words to the second song." The audience let out a wave of awkward laughter. Some thought it was just a joke, a harmless slip. But Eddie knew better. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was setup. Roth was winding up for the kill shot. He leaned into the mic again, still grinning. "But that's okay," he said, "because unlike some people, I don't need to hide behind a guitar to be interesting." Boom! The crowd went silent. The insult hit like a punch to the chest. Millions watching at home heard it. Every journalist, every exec, every fan in that hall, they all heard it. But most of all, Eddie heard it. The man who'd redefined the sound of rock, who'd poured his soul into every riff, was being mocked, publicly, by the guy he helped make famous. The camera zoomed in, catching Eddie's face at the worst possible second. You could see it all, the shock, the humiliation, the anger, flashing across his expression before he forced himself to hold it together. That single image would haunt him for years, replayed in reruns, articles, documentaries. It became the face of a broken moment in rock history. Even Alex froze mid-beat, drumsticks suspended in midair like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Michael Anthony glanced down at the floor, too stunned to move. And Roth? He could smell the blood in the water. He wasn't done, not even close. "I mean, Eddie's great and all," Roth continued, fake sincerity dripping from every word. "Fantastic guitarist, really a virtuoso. But you ever notice how he never talks, never does interviews, always lets the guitar do the talking?" He paused again, letting the crowd squirm before twisting the knife. "Maybe it's because when you take away the instrument, there's not much left to say." Gasps, a few forced laughs, but mostly silence. The kind of silence that only comes when the audience realizes they're watching something cruel instead of entertaining. What millions of fans thought was a cheeky bit of banter was really a live humiliation. And everyone in the industry watching that night saw it for what it truly was. Roth burning the last bridge to a real Van Halen reunion, trying to rewrite history right there on MTV. He wanted to make it look like Eddie's genius wasn't brilliance, but a weakness. Like being shy and speaking through his guitar somehow made him less of an artist. The second song, Panama, technically happened, but it didn't feel like it. Eddie played every note perfectly because that's what he did. Perfection was his armor. But the joy was gone. The fire was gone. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was an execution. Roth had already delivered the fatal blow, and now Eddie was just finishing the set, because that's what professionals do, even when they're bleeding inside. When the final note rang out, the crowd applauded. Not because they were moved, but because applause was expected. It was muscle memory. But backstage, the mood was ice cold. Crew members, execs, even other artists, everyone felt it. They'd just watched something brutal disguised as entertainment. Eddie didn't bow. He didn't wave. He didn't even glance at the crowd. As soon as that final note faded, he turned and walked straight off stage, the Frankenstrat still slung across his shoulder like a lifeline. He moved fast, face blank, ignoring the noise and chaos around him. The second he reached his dressing room, he shut the door and locked it tight. Alex came running right after him, pounding on the door. "Eddie, open up, man." But Eddie stayed silent. He just sat there, alone, in a room full of mirrors, fake flowers, and that weird backstage cheer that suddenly felt sickeningly hollow. For the first time, Eddie couldn't escape the truth he'd been dodging for over a decade. His relationship with David Lee Roth wasn't broken. It was poisoned. No time, no money, no tour could ever fix that. Outside, the show carried on. Music, applause, fake smiles. But inside that tiny dressing room, a legend was unraveling. Eddie sat in the chair, head down, his guitar still resting on his lap, as Roth's words echoed over and over in his head. 4 sentences. Just 4. But they'd rippled through him like an earthquake. What Eddie didn't know was that those words wouldn't just haunt him. They'd follow his legacy. Every interview from that day on, every magazine profile, every debate about Van Halen's drama, it all circled back to that night. The 1996 MTV VMAs became the moment that defined the band's downfall, the proof that the original Van Halen could never truly reunite again. Music journalists turned into detectives, dissecting Roth's lines like evidence from a crime scene. Some claimed it was premeditated, that Roth had planned the entire ambush. Others argued it was just spontaneous cruelty, the kind that came naturally to someone who thrived on shock value. But either way, the damage was done, and the rock world couldn't stop talking about it. By midnight, the industry machine had already gone into full panic mode. Phones were ringing in every record label office in LA and New York. Managers were calling each other, trying to figure out how to spin this disaster. Executives who'd been dreaming of a massive Van Halen reunion tour were suddenly drafting backup plans. MTV, realizing they'd just aired what was basically a public breakup, started scrambling. Their VJs tried to play it off on air as just classic rock and roll unpredictability. But everyone knew that wasn't the truth. What they'd really broadcast was one man's ego torching another man's dignity, live, in front of millions. Out on the West Coast, Sammy Hagar was sitting at home in California watching the chaos unfold on TV. The guy who'd replaced Roth back in '85, and who was still technically in the band, later admitted that when he saw it, he actually felt a little vindicated. For years, Roth had been running his mouth saying that Van Halen without him wasn't real Van Halen, that Hagar was just a replacement, not evolution. But that night proved exactly why the Van Halen brothers had moved on in the first place. Because working with David Lee Roth always came with a price, and that price was chaos. Roth's ego wasn't a spark, it was dynamite. Around midnight, the phone in Eddie's hotel room started lighting up. His manager called, his lawyer called, journalists called. Even a few famous friends tried to reach out to him, offering sympathy, solidarity, maybe just curiosity. But Eddie didn't pick up a single one. He just sat there, in the dim light of that room, the Frankenstrat across his lap. Not playing, not tuning, just holding it. That guitar had always been his escape, his voice when words failed him. And right now, words completely failed him. How could he even begin to explain what just happened? How do you tell people that the guy you once created magic with, the man you shared stages, songs, and dreams with, had just stood on the biggest stage in music and told the world that you were nothing without your guitar, that the instrument that gave you a voice had now become the very thing used to humiliate you? Eddie Van Halen's whole life had been a fight to belong, to find his place in the world. He'd spent his childhood as the quiet Dutch kid who barely spoke English, getting picked on in Pasadena schools. A kid who couldn't express himself with words, so he learned to speak through sound. Music became his language, his shield, his power. But that night on MTV, David Lee Roth didn't just mock his guitar skills, he cut straight into Eddie's oldest wound. Roth's jab wasn't random. Not even close. Whether he realized it or not, he'd gone for the jugular, the deepest insecurity Eddie carried, the fear that without his guitar he disappeared, that without that sixth string in his hands he was invisible, just another guy in the crowd. In the days after the disaster, Eddie did something he almost never did. He talked to a therapist. But this time it wasn't about addiction or fame. It was about this. About the betrayal, the humiliation, and the strange emptiness that came after. For once, he needed someone to help him understand what had really happened on that stage. The therapist said something that hit him like truth wrapped in glass. Some people can't celebrate others without tearing them down. They need to shine alone. And Roth? He'd been doing that for years, needing to be the loudest, brightest presence in every room. If someone else got attention, he'd find a way to dim their light. It wasn't new. It had always been there, buried beneath the hits, the tours, the fame. The world saw chemistry. Eddie was finally realizing it had always been competition. And the most twisted part, Roth's attack wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. He'd done it in the slickest, most manipulative way possible, with a grin and a joke. By framing it as funny banter, he made sure that if Eddie ever called him out, Eddie would look like the problem, the uptight one, The guy who couldn't take a joke. It was the perfect trap. A setup masked as humor. If Eddie stayed silent, he looked weak. But if he spoke up, he looked petty. Either way, Roth won. That's what made it genius. And evil. It wasn't just a moment of betrayal. It was a psychological chess move played live under bright lights with the whole world watching. That MTV moment didn't just end a reunion. It changed Eddie forever. He'd always been a little private, a little shy when it came to interviews and the spotlight. But after that night, he shut down completely. The man who once filled arenas now avoided cameras. His trust in people, already fragile from years of backstabbing in the industry, took another hit. Even his working relationship suffered. When Van Halen eventually split with Sammy Hagar later in 1996, it wasn't because of the MTV blow-up, but it definitely added tension to everything. Eddie was tired of drama, tired of egos, tired of giving people access to his world only to get burned. So he did what he always did when life got too loud. He retreated to his home studio, 5150. There, surrounded by his gear and his guitars, Eddie could breathe again. In that space, every note, every knob, every sound was under his control. No cameras, no surprises, no ambushes disguised as reunions. Just music, pure, honest, his way. But the whole mess revealed something deeper, something about fame, about art, and about what it really means to create with someone. Eddie and Roth had built something together that changed rock forever. Their chemistry wasn't fake, it was explosive magic. Eddie's mind-blowing guitar work mixed with Roth's over-the-top showmanship created the sound of an entire generation. The swagger, the sound, the energy, that was Van Halen. But making art together doesn't mean you share the same heart. It doesn't mean you trust each other, or even like each other. Sometimes lightning strikes between two people who can't stand one another, and what they create together becomes bigger than both of them. That's what Van Halen was. Lightning in a bottle. A moment when two completely different worlds collided and made something unforgettable. In the end, all that remained were two men, trapped in the long, bitter shadows they cast over each other. For David Lee Roth, the 1996 MTV moment probably felt like sweet victory. He got to reclaim the spotlight, remind the world that he was the front man, the voice, the swagger, the image people had once worshipped. For a fleeting moment, he got to feel untouchable again. But that high came with a price, and it lasted about as long as the applause did. Because in the long run, that stunt didn't make Roth look powerful. It exposed him. It proved what so many inside the industry had whispered for years, that his ego made real collaboration impossible. Working with Roth meant playing by his rules, feeding his legend, and accepting that when it came down to it, his pride mattered more than the music. That night on MTV wasn't just a reunion gone wrong. It was a full-blown warning sign written in neon for everyone to see. There were reunion attempts later, sure, several of them. Each one surrounded by contracts, managers, and bodyguards of legal paperwork, meant to protect Eddie from exactly what had happened that night. They'd stand together again on stage for the fans, pretending everything was fine, but everyone could see it. The spark was gone. The chemistry that once defined Van Halen's greatness had been poisoned by that one public betrayal. Trust, once shattered that violently, doesn't rebuild. Not after it's been crushed in front of millions. Eddie Van Halen passed away on October 6, 2020, without ever truly making peace with David Lee Roth. They'd worked together again in controlled bursts, yes, but it was business now, not brotherhood. The laughter, the shared joy, the pure creative energy that made songs like Panama and Jump explode with life, that was gone forever. And that's what makes the MTV incident so haunting. It wasn't just a feud or an awkward moment between two rock icons. It was a mirror, showing the darker side of creativity, the cost of ego, and the danger of chasing fame over friendship. The same traits that make a performer magnetic, confidence, boldness, refusal to back down, can also twist into something toxic. They can make a person cruel, manipulative, and willing to destroy someone else just to keep their crown shining. Eddie learned that lesson the hardest way possible: live in front of 13 million people. The world watched him get blindsided and humiliated. And still, he didn't explode. He didn't storm off mid-show or clap back into the mic. He just stood there, professional to the core, and finished the song. That was Eddie Van Halen, grace under fire, dignity in disaster. And yet, even after all of that, Eddie's legacy outlived the pain. The brown sound, that thick, warm, mind-bending guitar tone he invented, became the holy grail of rock. His tapping technique, his Frankenstrat, his voltage sag trick that made amps cry and scream, those weren't just gimmicks, they were revolutions. Generations of guitarists built their craft on the foundation Eddie laid down. Roth's cruel words that night tried to make it sound like Eddie was just a man hiding behind his guitar. But time told the truth. Eddie wasn't hiding, he was speaking. Through every note, every solo, every riff, he told stories that words could never capture. His guitar wasn't a shield, it was his voice, his soul, his truth turned electric. And long after that, MTV Humiliation faded from the headlines, Eddie's music kept echoing, louder, purer, eternal. While Roth's moment turned to dust, Eddie's sound became history. He didn't need the mic to speak. His 6 strings said it all. The world forgot the insult, but it never forgot the sound. Because in the end, legends aren't defined by the noise around them. They're defined by what still rings out when the noise is gone. If you want more wild, untold stories like this, the ones the industry tried to bury, don't forget to like and subscribe. I read every comment, and I love hearing your thoughts. Tell me, do you think Roth went too far that night?